want to welcome you back to Zion Presbyterian Podcast. And in our last post, we were talking about some of the applications of the law of God. And the reason we needed to address this is because there's such an affinity out there towards God's law. And we wanted to make sure that we at least presented our understanding and the uses of God's law, so that we could get to a basic discussion of the sixth commandment, which is, thou shalt not murder. Now, on the surface, guys, that's pretty simple, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, don't take the life of somebody.
I mean,
you shouldn't take the life of somebody without...
Have you killed somebody?
No, I haven't. Thankfully.
Steve, have you...
Why should I take somebody's life? If I have no law over me, then I'm a law unto myself.
Okay, Steve.
Well... He's jumping into it.
Steve has just jumped full force right into the middle.
We might as well get into the mix here.
Okay, here we go. We got a law that says, thou shalt not murder. I'm not a murderer.
No, me neither. I've never killed anybody.
I mean, so why should we even take this law seriously?
Oh, yeah. What about, have you ever had anxiety and worry?
Wait a minute.
How about that?
What are you saying about the sixth commandment?
Well, I'm saying that the health of an individual has a lot to do with their countenance, or their countenance reflects their spiritual health.
So you're saying that thou shalt not murder means more than just thou shalt not take a knife.
Oh, yes. In fact, I would go so far as to say that the summary, remember, these words are summaries of the law of God, summaries of the book. God's revealed word, His revealed law. I would go so far as to say that the law of God, even found in the summary of the Ten Commandments, is a reflection totally of the gospel of the Lord Jesus Christ. And that
in some aspect.
In some aspect. In no single law. In fact, there are laws that relate to each other, like lying, robbery, superiors and inferiors, found in the Fifth Commandment. All these relate to each other and reflect some aspect of the gospel of the Lord Jesus Christ and His finished work on the cross.
Well, I've got a question. I've got to.
I'm getting ready to jump in.
All right, I know. Listen. So, but does the sixth commandment just forbid, Stephen, the taking of another person's life, or what about our own lives?
No, I think it does. I mean, how do you say all life without including your own?
That's right.
So, what do you think the underlying... what's the underlying purpose of the sixth commandment? What do you think is being taught in the sixth commandment?
Well, I can respond with a question.
Okay.
What does God think is important?
Okay.
And God obviously thinks His own glory is important because He's the most important person in the universe.
No doubt.
and for good reason, He is. And He tells us in Genesis that He made man in His image.
Okay.
And so if He made man in His image, it is very important to protect the image of God. Right. And so taking a life, whether it's your own or someone else's, is destroying the image of God.
Okay, well, I got a question for you then. So life is precious to God.
Right.
All life's precious to God. He created, right? He's the creator. He calls Himself numerous times in the Bible, creator. I would think that means it's important to God. He likes to refer to Himself as, I'm your creator. Well, but is that life more important than His glory? Is it more important than His person? Is life precious at all costs, Stephen?
No. God is the giver. God is the giver of life. God is the one who determines when that heartbeat is going to end, when the lifeblood is gone from the body. So God is the one who makes that decision. It's not up to me or to you or to anyone else to make that determination. And so, but I would say that no, God's glory is more important than life itself.
So the sixth commandment is about life, but it doesn't teach that life is the most precious thing in the universe.
Right.
God is
the most precious thing in the universe.
All right. So the sixth commandment then, Steve, talk to us about, all right, the sixth commandment does presuppose God's sovereignty as creator.
Yes.
He's the giver of life. He's the taker of life. We see that often in the Bible as well.
Right.
And yet God has given us rules and guidelines on how we're to treat life. That is, if it's precious to God, it should be precious to us.
Exactly.
So let's talk a little bit about self-murder, because you brought this up. It's your fault. You brought up anxiety and some of these emotions. How can we kill ourselves? I mean, if I take a gun, I could shoot myself in the head, and that would be self-murder. That's wrong.
That's right. You're correct.
But you're telling me there's other ways to kill myself?
Oh yes. Anything that is detrimental to life. Now, what's life? Well, life is not just the beating of a heart or breathing of lungs and some kind of heart-lung prep. Life has to do with the mind and the soul and physique and everything else. It's the total. So when you do things against yourself that are suicidal, not just blowing your brains out with a pistol, but that you abuse yourself, I would even go so far as to say anything that you hold above your relationship with Christ, such as your job, your 401k, your family, anything like that, is basically some degree, has some association with suicide, which is a breaking of the Sixth Commandment.
Well,
it's self-denigrating, it is self-deprecating, and I think is a violation of the Sixth Commandment. It's something that we're all tempted to do. I'm not saying, that's something we're all tempted to focus upon. In the South particularly, we revere our families, we love our families, love our wives, our children, our grandchildren, but we cannot hold them above Christ. If we do hold them above God's character, we are violating this commandment and others, by the way. For instance, the first commandment.
Well, he raises a very interesting point. This is something that I've dealt with recently in my business, and that is trying to protect assets of a company or assets that belong to an individual. Thinking about, have you ever heard the phrase, I poured my life into this. I poured my life into this project, whatever it is. And there's a sense where that's true.
Well, Stephen, that sounds like materialism. And I know we're getting short on time here, but guys, I mean, we don't want to be materialists.
No, that's true.
So how do we address this from the Sixth Commandment? I mean,
well, again, remember, God is the giver of all things. He's the giver of life. He's the giver of everything that makes life better. He's the giver of all.
So there's more to the quality of life than just my lungs.
I think so. I think quality of life is not some narrow, are you breathing now? It has to do with the whole.
Are you happy?
Happiness.
Yeah, or joy, personal gratitude, all those things like that.
Well, anything I do to rob you of your quality of life. I mean, this is where lawsuits do happen. I mean, somebody comes in and takes your car and steals your car and drives your car into the ditch or takes it and sells it. Well, they've robbed you, right? They've broken the 8th commandment, but they've also robbed you of your life because you've got to use your car. It's a quality of life issue. So you see where the commandments are connected.
It's interesting because even the Bible and God's law and these case laws, these applications of the summary of the moral law, talks about don't withhold the wages of someone who works for you because he depends on those wages. And in that culture, it was a daily thing so they could make sure they could go to the market and grab their food. Right. Well, guys, listen, we're going to wrap this one up, but stay tuned for part 3 because we're going to continue this discussion on this application dealing with the quality of life. So hope you stay tuned and come back and see us.